incredibly good news that's come out of the court today. But many of you won't have been able to watch the proceedings, so just let me explain to you what has and has not happened. First of all, the vast majority, I would say 95% of this judge's judgment was to uphold the prosecution's case for extradition. She refused extradition at the last moment, in the last words of her judgment, because she accepted that Julian Assange was a suicide risk and that if he was put under special administrative measures in the United States prison system, that would be an oppressive act. And on that basis, she refused extradition. What's going on at the moment is this. First of all, the United States are going to appeal this decision, and so the decision will be taken to a higher court, I expect, and we will have to fight this fight all over again. But at the moment, Edward Fitzgerald and Julian Assange's lawyers are talking to him so that they can prepare a bail application. So that will be heard in 45 minutes' time in this court. So please, do celebrate that the American prison system is so bad that even this judge wouldn't send Julian Assange into it.
Yes.
That's where we stand. That's where we stand today.
It's a moral victory to begin with.
This is a very emotional day for those of us who have worked with Julian for years and supported him for all these terrible, dreadful times. We are delighted that he is soon going to be a free man again. We heard today arguments from the judge which were deeply concerning. We heard that it is possible for people to be extradited from the UK on political grounds, that there is no bar to that. And that is something that ought to deeply concern all of us. And I hope that Parliament will revisit the legislation that was passed in the post-9/11 panic that removed the protection for people suffering political persecution from being prosecuted by other governments. We have a judgment which still says that the UK can take that the United States can take anybody, any journalist, out with their jurisdiction and prosecute them for telling the truth about American war crimes. That aspect of the judgment, deeply, deeply concerning. But all of that is for tomorrow. Today we are swept away by our joy at the fact that Julian will shortly be with us. We have a judgment which I think makes an excuse to deliver justice, an excuse based on the appalling conditions in American prisons, an excuse based on the effect that would have on American mental health, and perhaps a sign that the authorities are not prepared to follow through the persecution and destruction of a man for political reasons. And I'm delighted that this has been done. I'm delighted we have seen some humanity at the end of the process. It doesn't really matter, in a sense, how the justice has been reached, even if it's been reached by a peculiar process. We've seen a whole series of cases where extradition to the United States has been avoided on psychiatric pretexts, whereas the truth is that it's a recognition that a deeply flawed system of persecution should not be enacted by British courts. The judge has indicated that Julian will probably not be with us today. The American government has indicated that it's going to appeal the judgment, but there is a very good chance that Julian will be allowed out on bail pending the appeal, and I'm certainly very, very hopeful that we will have him walking with us this week. Thank you very much indeed.
Free Assange! Free! Free! Julian Assange! Free! Free! Julian Assange!
Go, Fidel!
I want to thank you, all of you, for being there, supporting the freedom of expression, supporting Julian Assange, the man, the journalist, the activist, the freedom fighter. This is a victory of all the people who never gave up. The British judicial system wanted to save the face today. For those who were inside listening to the judge, it was like listening to the prosecutor's statement to begin with. If it's not for the very, very fragile health condition of Julian Assange, he will be already extradited. Every journalist should be concerned about what was said today in court, because the political arguments provided by the United States were upheld by the British judicial system. I repeat, it's only the doctor's assessment of the fragile health condition of Julian Assange that have saved him from extradition. The judge had to recognize the appalling, the oppressive conditions of the US prison system under special administrative measures for espionage cases, and the risk of Julian going for suicidal if he is extradited. That was the only thing that stopped that. So be aware that freedom of expression is still under attack. If it was not for the health condition, Julian will be extradited. Thank you, all of you. This was a case not only about freedom of expression, it was also a case about human rights. It was a case about the right for political asylum. And I want to say something. I feel very proud for my country protecting Julian Assange for so many years.
Bravo.
Against all international pressure.
Bravo.
And I feel ashamed about the decision of the Ecuadorian government in 2019 to give up and to hand Julian over to the Americans and to the British. Well, let's hope that Julian will be walking free as he should and keeps defending himself in freedom. Too much damage has been already done. Who is going to compensate him for 10 years of persecution, of defamation, of calling him hacker, of calling him rapist, of treating him as a criminal. This is the world upside down. The war criminals in impunity, the ones who reveal the crimes, are still persecuted. But let's celebrate today this victory. This victory belongs to all of you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Vincent, the Director of International Campaigns for Reporters Without Borders. We have systematically monitored these entire extradition proceedings in February at the Woolwich Crown Court, in September at this court, and then today. We're the only NGO that has done so in the face of severe restrictions imposed by this court. We welcome today's decision. We are relieved that Mr. Assange will not be extradited to the United States. We share concerns about his health and his mental health. We have been highlighting this for quite some time, that he has been vulnerable, that we have stated, and I'll repeat today, that his extradition was a possible matter of life or death. So in this regard, this was the right decision. But we were concerned by many other elements of what we heard this morning. It is very clear that on substantive grounds, this country would have handed Mr. Assange over to the United States to face trial there. We disagree with the judge's assessment that this case was not politically motivated. We disagree with her assessment that it was not about free speech. We remain convinced that Mr. Assange has been targeted for his contributions to journalism. As we all know, the publication of the leaked information informed extensive public interest reporting. The public had a right to these stories, and the public still has a right to these type of stories. Yes. We're concerned that this decision leaves the door open for further prosecutions in this regard. If this happened to somebody that did not suffer from the mental health issues that Mr. Assange suffers, they could easily be handed over. Somebody else could just as easily be made an example of in the same way. So regardless of the fact that he will now not go to the United States, a clear signal has been sent that the arms of the US can reach everywhere, that journalists everywhere have to be a bit concerned about what they publish, particularly related to national security issues pertaining to the United States government. I would have liked to see a stronger position from this court, and indeed the UK government, in support of press freedom of expression, of human rights in this regard. So we continue to make a point on the broader principles here, and note as well that the Espionage Act must be reformed. It lacks a public interest defense. If anybody else is pursued in this way, they cannot adequately defend themselves. No publisher, no journalist, and no source. And here too in this country, the Official Secrets Act lacks a public interest defense. So until these broader issues are addressed, journalists remain at risk in this country, in the United States, and internationally. So again, while we welcome today's decision, we retain those concerns, and we will continue to advocate for reforms to these problematic laws in both countries. We also call urgently for Mr. Assange to be released without further delay. We urge the judge to grant bail without any further delay in this, as he faces serious health risks in Belmarsh prison now, with COVID infections sharply on the rise in his prison block. If anything happens to him, well, he should now be released. It is fully the UK's legal and moral responsibility. So we call again for his immediate release. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I know I said I was finished, but can I address access issues? Because actually what we faced this morning was outrageous. So many of you know our position about open justice restrictions in this case. We have documented extensive and involving barriers to open justice since day one of this case. This is why we've been the only NGO to systematically monitor, because we've been left to fight our way in at every step, and this was only possible thanks to the support of this community of grassroots activists. The public stepped in where this court failed to recognize the role of professional NGO observers in ensuring scrutiny of these proceedings and ensuring open justice. But this morning, at the last hurdle, we were out here before 5 a.m. this morning and faced extensive police pressure. For the first time in my 15-year career, I repeatedly faced the threat of arrest this morning in attempting to get into a court to do my job, to monitor a case of concern. This is unacceptable in the United Kingdom in 2021. So there are also broader issues here of open justice that must be addressed. Proceedings in any case of public interest must be open to scrutiny by the media, by NGOs such as myself, professional observers that do this in countries around the world, and by members of the public. The restrictions we saw in this trial were unacceptable. So we will continue to advocate for reforms to open justice to in the United Kingdom. Thank you.
I'm delighted that Julian is not going to be extradited to the United States. That's very good news indeed. There were aspects of the verdict which are very worrying. They stated that people can be extradited for political offences from the United Kingdom, which would be something of great worry to many refugees in the UK, and that the United States has the authority to prosecute people for publishing against the interests of their national security. Those aspects of the judgment are worrying, but the overall decision that the conditions in United States prisons are so bad that it would be incompatible with Julian's health for him to be extradited. Obviously, we're very, very pleased about that. It's frankly unexpected at this stage of the proceedings. I'm extremely happy.
And how do you feel things will happen on Wednesday in terms of the bail application and also the appeal process? Very happy.
The appeal process will take its time to go through. It'll be a few months before the United States can have their appeal heard. I'm very confident, I've always been very confident that as soon as this reaches a higher court, there's so many bad points of law in the United States application that it will not succeed. So I'm extremely confident about the appeal process. Also, it would make little sense now that extradition has been denied for him to be kept on bail, kept in Belmarsh jail during a COVID outbreak pending the appeal. So I'm very hopeful indeed, and I expect that come Wednesday's bail hearing, we will see Julian actually released.
Ecstatic victory, so unexpected, and delighted, absolutely delighted. It's like a big weight lifted and the window of hope wide open. For Julian Assange, for press freedom, and for Wikileaks, the work of Wikileaks. We have watched him dedicate his life to this work, and today we see, after 10 years of a very difficult battle, the first real rays of hope for his freedom. This is a fight for legitimizing the work of Wikileaks, and his freedom is paramount to this battle. I'm delighted.
And are you feeling positive about the bail hearing Wednesday?
We are hoping that he will be granted bail. It's about time he starts rebuilding his life with his family and children. It's about time he regains his voice. He is the greatest defender of himself, of his work, and of Wikileaks. So to have him free, to be able to engage with the legal process in a fair manner, to be able to reach out to the world and explain, will be fantastic.
Well, moderately optimistic. I have a feeling that we are on the right track towards full justice, but we have still a way to go.
What do you expect from?
Sorry?
What do you expect from the hearing?
I'm hoping that Julian can walk free this afternoon. That would be the best case scenario. But we still do have a fight ahead of us, and journalism does have a fight ahead of us. I mean, we're talking about the indictment still being in place in the US, which is a threat to all journalists all around the world.
Where will he go if he's free?
That would... It's up to the judge if what the bail conditions will be if he grants bail, so we have no knowledge of that, basically.
Feeling fairly optimistic today for the bail hearing. I think it would be remarkable to refuse bail pending a possible appeal that hasn't even been lodged yet, and where the Justice Department is saying it may not appeal. And there's never been a case of a refusal to extradite on health grounds being refused at appeal. So the chances, there's no motivation to respond. So I'm very, very optimistic today.
Very difficult to tell because the judge has a variety of options before her. She could refuse bail, although I think that's very unlikely, having ruled that he's not going to be extradited. And then there could be lengthy debate about the conditions of bail, how much money, what will it be, house arrest and so forth and so on. So I think it could be quite a wrangle in there today.
It's obviously a great disappointment to get this decision now from Judge Barrecher not to release Julian Assange on bail. We think it's unjust and unfair and illogical as such. When you consider her ruling 2 days ago about Julian's health, which of course is caused in large part because he is being held in Belmarsh prison, to send him back there doesn't make any sense from any perspective. It's inhumane and it's illogical. This denial of bail will, in most likelihood, will be appealed to the High Court within hours or a few days, and we will expect this to be overturned because, frankly, as I say, it doesn't make any sense from any point of view. I want to draw your attention as well to the fact that the United States has already indicated that they are seeing a defeat in this pursuit, this unjust persecution. Let me draw your attention to a statement by the very man who signed the first indictment in the Eastern District of Virginia, a man who is about to leave office. He was appointed by Trump. He stated that he was totally unsure that the case against Julian Assange would be continued under the new administration. He said, well, we spent a lot of resources on that. Maybe the new administration incoming will simply decide to drop the case. That's an extraordinary statement. It's an indication that they are, in essence, accepting this has gone way too far and it's about time to let it go. So the fight will continue. The fight for Julian, we want him out. If the opposition will appeal, that will be met. We still want the President of the United States, both the one soon leaving office and the one coming in, to consider pardon. We want this to end, but we are confident that justice will prevail.
This is a huge disappointment. Julian should not be in Belmarsh prison in the first place. I urge the Department of Justice to drop the charges and the President of the United States to pardon Julian. Thank you.
Reporters Without Borders condemns this decision taken today, which we view as unnecessarily cruel. This court can't undo the past 10 years of hell that Julian Assange has had to endure, but they could have made it right going forward. We fully believe that Julian Assange was targeted for his contributions to journalism. The past 10 years, he has suffered only because of publishing information in the public interest. He shouldn't have to spend another moment unjustly deprived of his liberty. We reiterate our concerns about his mental health and his physical health the longer he has to stay in Belmarsh prison as well. If anything happens to him in this period of custody, it is the legal and moral responsibility of the UK government. We call again for his immediate release and for this case to be dropped. We call on the US government not to pursue the appeal. Enough is enough. It has been 10 years. Let this man go and leave him in peace.
We're used to this being a very different case. So I'm not entirely surprised that the judge reverted to what's been her stance for most of this, which is to back up the US prosecution's case. Her primary objection was that Julian would be a flight risk, but as the defense attorney said, this is a completely different situation now. The one jurisdiction in the world where Julian Assange is safe from US arrest is Britain. The minute he walked outside Britain, the extradition being quashed would mean nothing and he could be rearrested. So he's got absolutely no interest in going outside this country and every interest in seeing this through to appeal. So I think she made the wrong decision.
What do you think why she did it?
I think the pressure on her from the American prosecutors is very, very great. I mean, I was particularly surprised that she dismissed the idea that there's any COVID threat in Belmarsh. She accepted that there are only 3 prisoners in Belmarsh with COVID. Well, I'm sorry, in this city as a whole, 30%, 30% of the population are COVID positive. It beggars belief that that figure isn't at least the same and most probably higher in Belmarsh itself.
Will there be any steps from his lawyers to try to get him into another prison or so?
I'm sure they'll be looking at all those things, including appealing this bail decision. But obviously they'll take a few hours to think that through.
Denied the extradition in the first instance based on the very, very worrying health conditions that Julian Assange is going through as a result of 10-year persecution, 7-year stay in very difficult conditions in an embassy, and now 20 months in a maximum security prison. So there is a contradiction in the ruling from Monday. He has won his case. Now, he's not serving any sentence. He doesn't have anything to answer to justice as it stands now. Why is he kept in prison? So I understand this is not the end of the game. This is not the end of the road. There will be an appeal for today's decision, and let's hope that a superior court will have more sense of justice.
In the meantime, he will be in Belmarsh.
He will remain where he is, in Belmarsh prison.
In isolation.
In isolation, in an awful conditions, very oppressive conditions. This maximum security prison is called the British Guantanamo. As we know, there is even an outbreak of COVID. So it's absolutely unbelievable and very disappointing.
Well, it's obviously very disappointing. I think we were all expecting, as a logical consequence of the order of his discharge on Monday, that he would be given bail today, given that he is a remand prisoner, has not been convicted of anything, and his extradition has been barred. It seems very strange in those circumstances to continue to keep him in prison on appeal, particularly when the reason for the bar to his extradition was the condition of his health and the effect on his mental health, and so much evidence has been heard about how conditions in Belmarsh are deleterious to his health. So to continue to keep him there, it seems both illogical and cruel. Well, this decision not to grant bail can be appealed and can be appealed to the High Court. So I expect that will be the next thing we see, which will happen in a couple of weeks. His defence team need to consult with Julian and see and take his instructions on that. But I'd be very surprised indeed if we don't see an appeal to the High Court on the decision not to grant bail.
Do you know how long that would take, roughly?
Probably about a fortnight. Shouldn't be much longer than that. That really could happen quite fast.
We are really disappointed in today's decision, which we view as unnecessarily cruel. This judge had the opportunity to make this right going forward. Of course, we can't undo the past 10 years, but he should have been released. The mental health issues that we heard detailed on Monday and the physical health risks at COVID are enough to merit his immediate release. He remains at high risk in Belmarsh prison. But also, as a matter of principle, Julian Assange should not be deprived of his liberty for another moment, let alone weeks or possibly months. So we call again for his immediate release. The court has the opportunity to make this right. And also there's an opportunity for political intervention in the US in the early days of the Biden administration. We would call on them to break from Trump's legacy, to close the books on this case, and to stop pursuing this vexatious vendetta against somebody for publishing information in the public interest.
Well, disappointing decision from the judge, and I will say even contradictory, because it's the same judge that 2 days ago denied extradition based on the worrying health conditions of Julian Assange. Nothing has changed since Monday, and today she denied the bail. Julian Assange is not serving any sentence. Julian Assange has just won his case 2 days ago. Why he remains in prison? Because he is a political prisoner, because the persecution continues. This is a long war made of many battles. You win some, you lose some, but at the end, I think Julian, Wikileaks will prevail and we will win the war. Yeah.
What do you think will be the next steps?
Well, today's ruling is going to be appeal. A superior court can reverse that. Hopefully, they will grant bail to Julian. He will keep defending himself in freedom, joining his family, joining his loved ones. And the case hasn't finished yet. The American appeal has to be processed. I am hopeful that that appeal will end up giving freedom to Julian Assange.
So I have to say I was surprised by the judge's decision to refuse to grant bail to Julian Assange. This is because historically, when a case is refused, as was in his case, based on health grounds, it's quite rare for that to be reversed upon appeal, a point which was presented towards the court. However, the judge determined that it would be unfair for the prosecution, for the US government, who say they're planning on appealing, if Julian Assange failed to attend on the basis that he might abscond again. She said he has a vast network of supporters. She also cited Julian Assange's assistance to Edward Snowden, the NSA whistleblower. Julian Assange and Wikileaks assisted Edward Snowden to make his way to Hong Kong and to avoid arrest by US authorities after he disclosed his revelations of mass surveillance perpetrated by the GCHQ and the NSA. The judge considered this to be a contributing factor, even though, as it was pointed out by the defense, that if there's any jurisdiction where Julian Assange is currently safe, it's in the United Kingdom. Anywhere else in the world, the United States could seek Julian Assange's arrest and extradition to the United States. She didn't seem to add enough weight, or sufficient weight at least, to the fact that Julian Assange has a fiancée here and 2 children. And she said that the prison conditions in Belmarsh are not as bad as the prison conditions that he would face in the United States, which was the basis of her refusal to grant extradition.
What do you think will happen next?
Well, it seems like the defense are likely to appeal the decision. It all comes down as well as to whether or not the prosecution actually does lodge an appeal. Claire Dobbin, the barrister for the prosecution, started to lay out a detailed argument for their grounds of appeal. The judge ended up interrupting her, saying it's not necessary to go into detail here. But it was also presented by the defense that the key prosecutor in the United States, in Virginia, who's stepping down now, appeared to be unclear whether the Joe Biden administration would continue the Trump administration's prosecution of Julian Assange. If that appeal by the US government doesn't happen, then Julian Assange would presumably then be set free. If they do continue with their appeal of the judge's refusal to extradite Assange, then almost certainly we can expect the defense to lodge some form of appeal with the High Court to seek Julian Assange's release from Belmarsh prison so that he can stay with his family.
There's only one decision!